So good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. And we're celebrating today the day when we remember all the victims of violence as a result of religion and belief. Please go ahead, Duncan.
And as we celebrate or remember the International Day in which we commemorate victims of the acts of violence based on religion and belief, I would like to start off with a little meditative text based on passages from the Bible. And this meditative text was inspired by the Magnificat, the Song of Mary. And later I will elaborate a little bit more on this Magnificat. So the text starts as follows. It is a text written by Gerard van Midden, the Dutch author, from his book, The Jukebox of My Soul. So here's the text, inspired by the Magnificat. Look at them, those brutal rulers of this world, how they kneel before me, oh, so pious. Their lips mumble hushed words, but I cannot hear what they say. What do those rulers who have thousands of debts on their consciences think when they see me? Me, Mary, that simple girl from Nazareth, the mother of Jesus, who wanted to make the world more beautiful, happier, different through non-violent resistance, peaceful words, powerful deeds. I cannot look at it anymore and shake the stone from my body. I step off my pedestal and am no longer a statue looking small and humble into the world. I pull the paint off my face and step out of my painting to sing to all those rulers and to all those commanders. Come down from your throne. Feed the hungry. Concern yourself with the fate of all the people for whom you can be a good king. You may kneel, but for people that you think are worth nothing, so that they become greater, more powerful, truly human. Because for these people, my son has come as a humble king who has an eye for the little ones and washed their feet. A dream? No, a living protest song that everyone in the world is waiting for.
Thank you, Duncan. Again, it's wonderful to remember those who are also caring for us and caring for not just family, but those beyond family. I'd like to continue now with a presentation and looking at some of the instruments we have to use as a kind of benchmark in helping us to understand what it really means, what it means to victims of violence based on religion and belief. And of course, religion and belief also includes lifestyle. And as we know, today, there are so many different people, different ways of living. And as the world gets smaller in a sense of being connected, of course, we realize how diverse our world is. But sometimes not everybody appreciates how diverse we are. What I'd like to do today is to share with you, I'm just going to move some of those things. I'd like to share with you some work I've been doing on the Istanbul Convention. Let me just go to slideshow. So can everybody see? Excellent, excellent. You can see here, I'm speaking today as a URI Global Trustee. I'm a Global Trustee for the multi-region, and the multi-region, as it probably says, is also covering all continents, from Eurasia to the Americas, and also Europe and Africa. So where do we start? Where do we start? Well, the Istanbul Convention was something which was introduced 10 years ago. Its full title is the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. It was called or coined the Istanbul Convention because it was signed in May 2011 in Istanbul. So adopted on the 11th of May 2011 and has been effective since the 1st of August 2014 upon 10 ratifications, including 8 by the Council of Europe member states. Here you can see which countries have signed and ratified. That's the green countries. The countries which have only signed, those countries which have not signed, and last, unfortunately, the purple country, which is Turkey, who denounced, in other words, they stepped out of the Istanbul Convention on the 1st of July 2021. When we look at the Istanbul Convention, the major thing that pops out is the following. The Istanbul Convention recognizes that violence against women is a manifestation of historically unequal power relations between women and men, which have led to domination over and discrimination against women by men, and to the prevention of the full advancement of women. It's quite a lot when you think about it. The convention itself contains 81 articles separated into 12 chapters. Its structure follows the structure of the Council of Europe's most recent conventions. The structure of the instrument is based on the 4 Ps: prevention, protection and support of victims, prosecution, and integrated policies. Each area foresees a series of specific measures. The convention also establishes obligations in relation to the collection of data and supporting research in the field of violence against women. The preamble recalls the European Convention on Human Rights, European Social Charter, and the Convention on Action Against Trafficking in Human Beings, as well as the international human rights treaties by the United Nations and Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. In Article 2, this convention indicates that the provisions shall apply in time of peace and also in situations of armed conflicts, in violence against women and domestic violence. Article 3 defines key terms. Violence against women is violation of human rights and a form of discrimination against women, and shall mean all acts of gender-based violation that result in or are likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological, or economic harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Domestic violence. All acts of physical, sexual, psychological or economic violence that occur within the family or domestic unit or between former or current spouses or partners, whether or not the perpetrator shares or has shared the same residence with the victim. Gender means the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for women and men. Gender-based violence against women means violence that is directed against a woman because she is a woman or that affects women disproportionately. Article 4 prohibits several types of discrimination, stating the implementation of the provisions of this convention by the parties, in particular, measures to protect the rights of victims, shall be secured without discrimination on any ground such as sex, gender, race, color, language, political or other opinion, national or social origin, association with a national minority, property, birth, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, state of health, disability, marital status, migrant or refugee status, or other status. Arguments against signing the Istanbul Convention. As I pointed out in my opening statement, Istanbul denounced the Istanbul Convention and went into operation or became active as of the 1st of July 2021. According to Deputy Chair Numan Kurtulmus, who was Deputy Chair of the Justice and Development Party, AKP, at the time, said, quote, "There are two issues in this convention which we do not approve of. First is the gender issue, and the other is sexual orientation issue. There are also other issues, but these two have been the concepts which have played into the hands of LGBT and marginal elements. They have taken refuge behind these concepts." This was used as the argument for Turkey to withdraw from the convention. This highlights the common misconceptions about the convention, which some member states use as an argument for not ratifying it or how to counter them. Arba Kokalare wrote an extensive article dealing with these misconceptions and offered an argument or a counter argument. First of all, she said there were about 5, again, common misconceptions. Number 1, the convention supports a destructive gender ideology. Untrue. The treaty does not force any gender ideology on the states. The text just separates the terms sex and gender. Gender refers to how social structures can lead to a lack of respect for women's rights, resulting in increased violence, thus serving as an interpretation tool. Regardless, it does not force the countries to adopt that position, nor does it replace any biological definition. 2, the misconception that the convention legitimates illegal migration. Also untrue. The convention does not call for a new refugee status. Instead, it is about women's rights to a due asylum procedure, taking into account why they are seeking protection, adopting a gender-sensitive approach, and additionally considering the violence aspect. Number 3, some countries claim that they already have sufficient legislation and that there is no need to join the convention. That is not a fair reason to not ratify or implement it. The convention covers the elimination of all types of violence, and no country is free from violence against women. It is also primarily a complementary legal document, bringing a specific added value in this area compared to previous international texts. Number 4, the Istanbul Convention legally forces countries to introduce a third gender. No, the convention does not oblige states to recognize a third sex under domestic law. The term third sex does not even appear in the text. Finally, 5, the Istanbul Convention threatens the nuclear family and traditional family values. This is not true. The convention does not stipulate any such views, and ratification does not lead to forcing men or women into a certain lifestyle. It merely stipulates that women who are subjected to domestic violence have the right to receive protection and the support they need to leave a violent relationship. In a press release in November 2018, the Council of Europe stated, quote, despite its clearly stated aims, several religious and ultra-conservative groups have been spreading false narratives about the Istanbul Convention. End of quote. The release stated that the convention does not seek to impose a certain lifestyle or interfere with personal organization of private life. Instead, it seeks only to prevent violence against women and domestic violence. The release stated that, quote, the convention is certainly not about ending sexual differences between women and men. Nowhere does the convention ever imply that women and men are or should be the same, and that the convention does not seek to regulate family life and or family structures. It neither contains a definition of family, nor does it promote a particular type of family setting. According to the newspaper Balkan Insight, I'll give all the references later, by the way. According to the Balkan Insight, criticism of the convention was strongest in Central and Eastern Europe, and mainly by the far right and national conservatives, and has little foundation in its actual content. Quote, using disinformation, populist rhetoric, and appeals to Christian and Islamic morality, critics have managed to reframe what is essentially a set of guidelines that creates a comprehensive legal framework and approach to combat violence against women into a sinister attempt by Western Europeans to foist their overly liberal policies on reluctant societies further east. Again, it sounds almost as if it's a Western European conspiracy. Inspired by The Handmaid's Tale, just a moment, which I'm sure a lot of you will recognize. Inspired by The Handmaid's Tale, protesters taking part in a rally against Polish, this was in Poland, in Warsaw, I think, about the Polish government's plans to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention on Prevention and Combating of Home Violence. So this was in Warsaw, I think it was 2019. And this was also an attempt, again, they were using arguments like it's attacking our family values, especially Christian values, because of course Poland is a very Christian country. But you can see here again, the protesters were also pointing out that sexual or domestic violence is not just about religion or moral family values, but is also about fundamental rights. So Poland used this last argument of threatening traditional values. But as we've seen, it cannot be taken as a justification for acts of violence against women. Now, in Poland, Poland has not continued with the process of withdrawing, but never say never. The moment there's many process of anti-abortion laws which are in place, and they're very, very strict in Poland. So the whole conversation has certainly not ended in Poland. As we notice, the word gender does not replace women and men, nor does the convention promote any gender ideology. The word gender is used in the convention to emphasize that women are more likely to experience violence because they are women. Nothing more, nothing less. Recognition of same-sex marriages is not in the convention. The convention does not affect national civil law rules on marriage in any ways. So, of course, any country which does not allow same-sex marriage are not affected by the convention. There was an article by Lawrence Gierka, quote, Poland's ruling Conservative Law and Justice Party has taken exception to the Istanbul Convention, claiming it threatens religion and family values with its view on gender, which the treaty describes as socially constructed. As I pointed out, the Istanbul Convention was first in place in May 2011. So this year there was the 10 years celebrations. So how far have we come since 2011? How many more countries have ratified and signed? The European Union finally did sign and ratify. The European Union, of course, is not the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is much broader. But it took a while for the European Union, again, because of, you know, the diversity within the European Union. In Berlin, there was on the 11th of May 2021, so this year, there was a conference organized by the Gender Equality Division and the Violence Against Women Division of the Council of Europe, quite a mouthful, but that was in partnership with the German Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth, in the framework of the German presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. Again, you've got the difference between the Council of Europe and the European Union. I've included the link to the YouTube recording of this conference. It's about 5 hours, but it's absolutely brilliant. It's just amazing to hear the stories of women who have suffered from domestic violence, how they've been able to engage in lobbying, but it really was a very, very interesting conference. From the Dutch government, quote, the Istanbul Convention has already had a positive impact on women's lives across Europe, calling on governments to prevent violence against women, to protect and help victims, and to punish perpetrators. In a comprehensive effort to end such violence means restoring the dignity of women who have become victims of violence. The European Convention on Human Rights attaches paramount importance to this value. The Istanbul Convention plays an important role in making a change for women and girls for a better future for all. It should be noted that Dutch legislation has changed with regards to the definition of rape because of the Istanbul Convention. And this is how we can see that the Istanbul Convention provides for us a benchmark. If we familiarize ourselves with what the convention is about and listen to the arguments being used for not applying it or signing it, then we are there. We have the arguments, we have the tools to be able to help when we realize that women are having campaigns, actions. And I was specifically thinking recently of what has been called or termed femicide. Femicide. This is referring to the untold murders of women in domestic situations. But because now Turkey has pulled out of the convention, these women have absolutely no recourse whatsoever. Because basically what Turkey has done is saying femicide, domestic violence, that's something between a husband or a spouse and the woman. So withdraws its responsibility. And of course, now what we're seeing is that femicide is the order of the day. And I would urge everyone to really look, and I'm looking, especially from URI, to see how we can help and support our sisters and brothers, because young children are involved here, people who are coming out of the closet, homosexuals, gays, everyone, but anyone who has a different lifestyle. So it's not just women, but everybody who has a different lifestyle and are being punished, are being punished because they believe in something other than what is the order of the day. Very recently, I don't have to really mention it, but I will, we've seen now how the Taliban are saying that they will treat women equally, that they will have jobs offered to them, and that they will have a leading role in life, social life, etc., etc. But they will also have to comply with Sharia law. Nobody actually knows at the moment what they actually mean. On some of the journals, on the news journals, reporters have actually said or asked, what is the definition? What do you mean by Sharia? What are the consequences? And of course, the answers are extremely vague, and we're still not sure. But the truth of it is that many women who were running shops, organizations, helping in clinics, family planning, and any aspect of social life are now not even daring to appear online or for reporters. They're absolutely scared, and there are only a couple of people who are willing to actually speak with the reporters. So we have no idea what is really going to happen now in Afghanistan. But it's the same, as I say, in Turkey. It is so difficult, and we have to be so vigilant. One of the things that we can do, of course, is spiritual resilience. We can offer our prayers. The very fact that we're thinking about and sending energy, of course, is extremely important. And which is why, you know, from a religious point of view, I think we should remember, well, many people in our prayers every day, but specifically I would ask people to think specifically about our sisters and brothers in Turkey and now in Afghanistan. And if any of you have any ideas of how we, you or I, or any of us can help, then definitely get in touch. I think this is why it's so important that we are, as a community, able to connect, and we have the channels, we have the means, but we also have to be discreet, because one of the worst things that can happen, and some of us are in our enthusiasm actually expose expose the victims. And in our enthusiasm to help, we sometimes endanger the lives of those people who are really the most in danger. So it's a bit tricky. I always say it's very difficult. How can we help? But hopefully in the next session, we will be able to share how we can actually help and share our stories, but also offer some ways of how we can actually support people in this very, very dire situation. Here are the links. I will post them on the various Facebook groups, or I can send them by email if you want to get in touch with me. My common or my most used email address is morgana@paganfederation.org. I'll put that in the chat when I've stopped presenting. But I would recommend looking at some of the specifically the PDF, which is in English, about what the Istanbul Convention is. It lists all the articles very, very clearly. And there are also other conventions. There is the one from 1979. I've forgotten the CEDAW. Those are all earlier conventions, and they're all still in place, of course. So familiarizing yourself with the legal documents and the rights we have and are approved by the United Nations, ratified by many countries in the world. These conventions are so important because they give us again the framework and the arguments that we can put forward. And here is the conference. It was on Vimeo, not YouTube. I thought it was on YouTube, but it's on Vimeo. I'll put this in the chat as well. And this was a shot of Franziska Giffey, who was speaking at that very long convention. Thank you for listening, and we'll continue now with an open forum where I hope Duncan and Carola and maybe some other people have got things to share. Thank you for listening. Actually, are there any questions? I mean, there's always the danger, but I think the questions will come later. But yes, Duncan, you had a question.
Yes, Morgana, thank you very much for sharing this very important issue, talking about it. I think it's a subject of grave importance. At the beginning of your presentation, you shared a photo with us where a lot of women were on the forefront in something what looks like a demonstration. And from the writings on the poster, I suppose it is taken in Turkey.
Yeah,
this image.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how did the LGBTQ community in Turkey, particularly women, because women seems were on the forefront in that demonstration, how did they responded to the decision of the Turkish government to withdraw from the Istanbul Convention? Apart from demonstration, were there other actions, or were things put into writing, or were there demands made to the parliament, or to? Can you share with me if you know what?
Yeah. Well, the immediate effect, as I say, this was the 1st of July when they withdrew from the convention. And of course, we've recently had gay pride and various other parades, also in Amsterdam, of course. And we also, concurrent to all of this, was the European football and all the problems in Hungary. So the gay community were already getting quite a lot of airplay. But when I remember when there was the gay pride in Turkey, again, there was a lot of opposition. And of course, people are still trying as much, but of course, the major thing is that the literally having to become less visible. And this is, one of the things about the Gay Parade was to actually sort of let people know and talk. And the same happened in Poland. It gets twisted as if so the Hungarians wanted this law that prevented anything about homosexuality being taught in schools, saying that we're protecting family values. And this is the problem, because when a government says this, they're protecting family values, then people respond and think, oh yes, the government know what they're talking about. But they don't kind of understand that part of the idea of growing up is to understand sexual identity and part of the education system. So what I've seen happening also in Turkey is, as Erdogan became more and more influential, the whole ideology of Ataturk, when he was very much for social equality, and he allowed Islam, but it was in a very liberal, moderate form. And you see now what's happening. There were more and more headscarves in Turkey. When I went to Turkey in the 1970s, it was so liberal, and you just see that the politics are just, again, bringing much more fundamental rights and being less and less open to many different groups of people. So what I saw happening, with the Gay Pride in the recent in Istanbul, but also in Hungary as well, and in Georgia. Remember, in Georgia, there were people jumping on the balconies, burning the rainbow flags, and saying homosexuality doesn't even exist here. It's like, what? So it's having it's all over. So I think Turkey is just continuing what they were already doing in the first place. It's just to really prevent people, and especially women, practicing, being who they want to be. So taking away their liberties.
Morgana, isn't it, you made a point about it being this right-wing politics, and it is, because it's matching up with what's happening in America in certain states as well, with these fundamental Christians, that they weaponize religion to as a form of intolerance. So they're really fundamental, and if you're like this, then you're, because in reality in school, it's not that you're promoting it, you're explaining it to children. I've seen it in the Netherlands with my own grandchildren, that there were children who were transitioning, that there were children who had two same-sex parents. These things come up. Yeah. You have to be able to talk about them and explain them, and it has to be open. You can't ostracize children and their families because they don't conform.
Yeah. Again, it's a way of, but again, you saw how the Turkish were, and also the Polish, and you get the kind of the sort of Eastern European, and that makes it really horrible, because it's still, Poland is actually Central Europe, but using as if it's a Western conspiracy, with our liberal attitudes. And of course the Netherlands as being the forefront of not just gay rights with same-sex marriage, but and euthanasia and many other things. It always seems as if we in the Netherlands are barbaric and allow anything. And well, we're actually saying we're trying to be civil, we're trying to be
inclusive,
and to make sure that everyone has a voice. But and so I think it's this disinformation. But again, we've seen in the Netherlands how difficult it is when people feel marginalized, and we've seen it like now with the vaccine, the vaxxers and all the rest of it, and it's so difficult. But I agree, Carola, all we can do is educate, 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 and not be afraid.
Yeah.
I think this is the other point, that if you are in the country where the education is not possible, and you have the, you fear for your life, if you talk about it as a teacher, or heaven forbid, if you are gay and you discover to be a gay teacher, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even as I was saying, that some people say, we've got enough legislation, but even in the Netherlands, of course, we know there are instances of gay bashing and again, the marginalized groups, but young Muslim girls who are now having lots of problems. But it's all different religious groups and non-religious groups. I mean, just very staunch. You only have to look at the Zwarte Piet discussion and all the rest of it. Did you see how people get very, very fundamental when they feel, and often it's feel, that their rights are being somehow distorted, or their rights are being taken from them, when they should actually be saying, no, we're trying to actually say, look at things, hold things up to the light and see, even if something was acceptable 200 years ago, is it acceptable now? And the point is, the discussion is even thwarted. So if we can't even have the discussion, then it's very, very difficult. So that's now what's happening in Turkey, what's happening in Afghanistan. The discussion, the dialogue, which is why you're right, in dialogue, we want to highlight these. Dialogue is not always possible because of these regimes, because of religious fundamental groups and all the rest of it. So again,
But isn't that the whole point of democracy, that you remain in discussion, that you remain, you try and work things out with all the various groups? It's very easy if it's A or B, but it isn't. There's a complex situation. Is complex because there are many different viewpoints, and in a democracy you have to satisfy all of those and come to a compromise. So democracy is a compromise in the end. It must be to satisfy everybody, because you can't really satisfy everybody, but you can get agreement.
Exactly. And as I say, the whole question of democracy, of course, is another in dialogue. I mean, that's what we've been trying to do with these talks, that the day of persecution, or International Day of this or International Day of that. Again, it's saying, just become more aware. And I think when you see the disinformation, and I said, no, that is absolutely incorrect. That's why I quoted this lady who said there were 5 major points that people were saying, oh, the convention was destroying family values. No, there was no definition of a family. So these it's good to know what the misconceptions are, and then you can say, I remember that now, and that was being used in Poland as an argument, or that was being used there. So you have ammunition, you have ways of going into dialogue with proper information. Duncan, you were going to, you wanted to mention again the situation in Afghanistan. Did you want to add anything to?
Well, not necessarily Afghanistan, because the spotlights are now on Afghanistan. But when it comes to commemorating the day of today, we have issues all over the world, even in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give you some background of the Magnificat. I think you know it. So in the Magnificat, for a long time, there has been a strong tradition that emphasized the obedient role of Mary as the one who was meek and mild and obedient, and said, oh, here's the servant of the Lord, and became impregnated by the Holy Spirit, and etc. But it has not always been like that. And there are also other views on the Magnificat that shows Mary not so much as an obedient young lady, 15-year-old girl, but as a rebel, as a one who who stands up and reminds people of their deeds and the consequences of their deeds. And in the Magnificat, she is saying, those mighty, they will pull down from their throne. So actually the Magnificat is a protest song. So if I just want to share with you how it is first in the Gospel of Luke, and then I will continue from there. So it's well, of course, I have to mention that Magnificat, that is the Latin word for magnifying, and since this song is attributed to Mary, and the first versions of the first verse of this song is that my soul magnifies the Lord. So in this original version in the Catholic Christian tradition, it reads like, my soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has looked with favor on his humble servant. From this day, all generations will call me blessed. The Almighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. He has mercy on those who fear him in every generation. He has shown the strength of his arm. He has scattered the proud in their conceit. He has cast down the mighty from their thrones and has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has come to the help of his servant Israel, for he has remembered his promise of mercy. He promised the promise he made to our fathers, to Abraham and his children forever. So this is what Luke allows Mary to say at the beginning of his gospel when she visited her cousin Elizabeth. It's a canticle, also known as the Song of Mary or the Canticle of Mary. And in the Byzantine tradition, it's the Ode of the Theotokos, the the Mother, the God-bearer. So this hymn of praise by Mary is recorded in this gospel, and Mary sings this song as she encountered her cousin Elizabeth, and proclaimed this song about the greatness of God, reminding actually what Lucas is doing actually is setting the tone for his gospel and turning the values. So everything that was considered as great and mighty will be replaced by those things that are insignificant, are viewed as insignificant. And that song sets the tone of Luke's gospel. But the Magnificat has also been an inspiration for a lot of people who felt being marginalized. And there are even examples of how this song was banned in several countries. I will soon talk about that in a short while. So for centuries, Mary has been portrayed as a meek and obedient young girl who availed herself to give birth to Jesus. But careful reading of the Magnificat reveals Mary more like a rebel, intent on reorienting unjust systems. In fact, throughout history, poor and oppressed people had often identified with this song, the longest set of words spoken by a woman in the New Testament. It is a protest song. The Magnificat has been viewed as dangerous by people in power. Some countries, such as India, Guatemala, and Argentina, have outright banned the Magnificat from being recited in liturgy or in public in certain period of their history. So the Magnificat was also banned during banned being sung or read in India under British rule. And the military junta of Argentina also outlawed any public display of Mary's song after the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo plastered her words on posters throughout the capital plaza. So these mothers were protesting because their sons, their husbands, their fathers were being taken away, and they were disappeared. And these mothers were very courageous to protest against that. Yeah. And then they were using the Magnificat as an inspiration to remember the dictators of that times. You will be pulled down from your throne one day. You have to be accountable to the people. So it says how this song is very revolutionary and it's very powerful. Even in the 1980s, it was also banned in Guatemala, where you had military in power at that time. And one of the most famous martyrs of South America. Oscar Romero was a bishop, is a martyr. He drew a comparison between Mary and the poor and powerless people in his community. But even Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German pastor and theologian who was executed by the Nazis, called the Magnificat the most passionate, the wildest, one might even say the most revolutionary hymn ever sung. So revolutionaries, poor and the oppressed all loved Mary, and they emphasized her glorious song. But the Magnificat has been viewed very often as dangerous by people in power because they felt threatened of what is being sang in what is being proclaimed in this song. Now, commenting on the Magnificat, one artist even said the following about Mary. Excuse me, and I quote: "She is a young woman singing a song about toppling rulers from their thrones. She is a radical who exists within the confines of institutionalized religion." Okay, end of quote. Now, what does this song tell us about people being oppressed because of their religion or their beliefs, or even because of their way of life, as Morgana, you rightfully pointed out, because when we commemorate this day, it's not only about people who are suffering because of their religious views, but all kind of peoples who have different ideas or who are, because of their physical condition or their human condition, are put in the margin of society. And I would also like to relate this song not only to the people of a particular religion, but also to all victims of domestic and institutionalized violence. And I think of women and men, as you also mentioned, Morgana. There are also men who suffer from their spouses, but most of the victims, as we know, are women. They suffer, but that is not to negate the fact that there are some men who also suffer from their spouses. But I also think of battered children, those who are bullied by their peers or by adults. I think of children in government-run or government-funded institutions who are robbed from their youth. And we in the Netherlands, we know that the jeugdzorg has a lot of problem, and a lot of children in jeugdzorg, a lot of youth are being victimized, are being robbed from their youth. They don't have the capacity to learn the basic skills how to survive in society. So there's a lot of problems in our jeugdzorg. And I think the Magnificat is also something that can be sang in those contexts, because we see that in the jeugdzorg, big money is playing a big role. We have all these companies come together and they usurp small institutions and become bigger and bigger, and then the big money becomes the important criteria, and that is to the expense of the young people. But I also think of children, of course, children who are sexually abused by people who have power over them, and we have these stories in sports. What is happening in sports, in daycare centers, but also in homes, in schools. So there are so many instances that we should think of when listening to the Magnificat, to remind us that how vulnerable people can be in the hands of those who have power over them. So I think reflecting on this song cannot leave us indifferent to all those who are trampled upon by people in power. It's a song that reminds us that we cannot abide by the status quo, and we have to be critical, we have to be vigilant, and we have to show empathy for those who suffer on the hands of those who are in power. So these are just a short reflection I wanted to share with you on the significance of the Magnificat in our contemporary times, in our own societies, and in our own surroundings. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Just noticed that we have a very special guest. You missed the presentation, by the way, but Kiran has joined us. I was actually asking her as well, how what is our role? Actually, what is our role as URI? You know, and should we be political in URI? Because the moment we start demonstrating or you know, acting on behalf of women's rights, human rights, are we actually being political? And for me, it's always been a big question: how political should we be in URI? Kieran, what are your view on this? Do you think we should be political or apolitical, or what are your views on this?
You have to unmute Kiran.
I don't know if you can hear us. Can you unmute? Oh, she probably come back a bit later. Not to worry, not to worry. I was just again interested because, you know, this is a huge question now. How far do we mingle or get involved with local politics, especially now in Iran and Afghanistan? How far do we actually get involved, or should we not get involved, or just anyway? What do you think, Petra? Do you think we should get politically involved? I mean, from PFI, I don't mind, because that's what we're there for. We're an activist organization.
I think it's kind of impossible not to get involved. Like, if you are part of a spiritual community, I don't think it's possible to just kind of stand back and not have well, an opinion. Anyone can have an opinion, but to not do anything about it. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. I'm not part of URI or anything, but for me, that's just yeah. It would be weird as a because you have a set of beliefs, whatever they are, and then to not get involved when there's like injustices or anything like that in the world. That, for me, that would be very weird.
Yeah. Well, exactly. As I say, it's of course, being involved can take the form of again, if we're in education, but take these opportunities to give like webinars and what have you. But again, not to be afraid to speak out. I think this is the crucial thing, not to be afraid to speak out, because so often we are the voice of those who have no voice, or because of oppression. So I think on the one hand, it is difficult to stay clear of politics, but I always try and put it in a bigger context of, you know, whether it's ecology, especially when we're talking about ecology and environmental issues. Again, it's my commitment as a pagan, as a human being, to protect the earth, you know, my reverence for earth. But that also involves a reverence for people and the dignity. And that's why, you know, I'm very passionate about what we call people of the earth, the indigenous people, and what's going on now in Brazil, for example. Which brings me to a very nice point where on the 25th of August, in The Hague, next to the Peace Palace, there's going to be a demonstration about the Brazilian government are going to be signing legislation which will take away the rights of indigenous people. And one of the nice things, of course, we're going to, I mean, that's going to be live, but then it's going to be connected with people in Brazil, and some of the URI people in Brazil are going to be connecting. So I think the sense of community is wonderful. And I think that's something that we can really put our, you know, our efforts into, and just saying, you're not alone. You're not alone. We are a community. We talk about cooperation circles. Well, surely we should be cooperating and not leaving anybody behind. And that may mean really, you know, putting ourselves perhaps in danger or getting sleepless nights. But I think it's really important. Yes, Carola.
I have a very nice poem that I found that actually fits in very nicely with this. So maybe, okay, it's called Work, an Ode for the Human. It's a micropoem, and a micropoem was done in a choral form. So you said a line and then the audience said the same line in response. and it was devised by Chicago writers during the Occupy movement of 2011. But I can just read it as normal as well. It's by Jennifer Carmen. One has to have a reason for living, a guiding philosophy, a purpose, a goal. The best way to communicate an idea is to act it out. No work, no eat. I want to have something to say about my own destiny, something I care about, something of value, something important. I thought that was a very nice thing that fitted in with this.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just reminded today, actually, Carola, you remember Aminette, she recommended the poems of John O'Donoghue, and she was posting a couple on we have the URI Environmental Network, because I'm very much part of this. The living environment is very important. So some of these poets coming from the pandemic are absolutely brilliant, because it's really this sense of community, and again supporting each other, which is really, really nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just we're getting toward, well, we're actually at the end of our hour. We're going to go on much longer than an hour. What I can do is we can round it up now with a prayer, or I was just saying to Petra, we were in another meeting about 2 hours ago, and of course today is full moon. Full moon is the harvest moon. It's the harvest moon, and
I feel like baying to the moon. Oh,
yeah, well, exactly. Our Lady of the Moon, Our Lady of the Moon, you know, and it's again, you know, Our Lady of the Moon, you know, watching over all, you know, all creatures of the earth, including the animals, but also the people who pollute the earth. But, you know, we are merciful in the sense that we will let you still partake, and we will forgive you, because we're very, very forgiving religion and all the rest of it. Nah, just joking. No, we're fighters, we're activists. So but it's again, it's this compassion. It's this compassion which I found is so important. And what I was saying today, again, we were talking with people from India, and they were talking about persecution again in the name of religion. Yeah. About still being the remnants of the missionary attitude from the British Empire. And it's like, well, surely we've got to a point now where, of course, we want to help each other. But as I said in the campaign we had for the Amazonia, it was, you know, with dignity, not charity. And I don't think it's so difficult for us to say, how would you like to be treated? Yeah. You know, I always ask myself, do I want to be treated like that with just a handout and then, you know, no, I wanted to be treated with dignity. And I think that's still so important when we're talking about in dialogue, whether we agree with people, their ideologies or not, I still think we need to treat each other with respect,
yeah,
and with dignity. So that was what I was saying today with the full moon. But of course, if we don't treat the earth with dignity, then the waters are polluted. There's no water to drink. The air is polluted. There's no air to breathe. And whether we like it or not, we're not going to survive. So yeah. Dignity or not, if we don't treat the earth with respect, then there is no earth to sustain us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and we really have to emphasize treating each other with dignity, because you see that more and more since the beginning of COVID. There seems to be, as the pressure grows, there's certain peoples who can't take that pressure, and who are becoming, yeah, they're becoming aggressive, they're becoming belligerent, they're becoming, yeah, they're not respecting what we all living by. So it's we have to really bring back that respect and dignity for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Duncan, did you want to finish our meeting with again a spiritual note?
Well, I can, but I also heard you were saying that you had something about the moon. And I would also very much like to hear about what you wanted to share. So perhaps I can start off with the words that have been spoken today. So important, very, very important. And these words shed lights, and I hope they shed lights on our paths and on the way we move forward. And that we can also be part of that light. We can be embedded in that light and share that light with people we meet on our daily base. So handing out this light to all of you, and to you, especially Morgana, who brought us together, and inviting you to make the closing remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So today we celebrate the full moon, and we call this one the harvest moon. And we take the opportunity to not only recognize the bountifulness of our harvest, but also those sacred gifts. But having said that, we also acknowledge that we can't do this alone. We can't do this alone. So what we often do at our full moon rituals is also to ask the gods, the goddesses, the nature spirits, the creative force to help us and to bless us. So I'd like to end by blessing all of us, and especially those people who have suffered violence at the hand of oppressors, and hope and pray that the Great Mother will be with them as well. So what I'd like to do is, everybody close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of a great spiral. And as you walk through the spiral, glance to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. Listen to the spirits of the wind, bringing messages. As you get to the center, there with the fruits of the seasons, the corn, the first apples, the fruits, and there in the center is a chalice of fresh, clean, sparkling water. Remember how precious water is. Water which feeds us, our families, our animals, our lands, our grain, our apple trees, and all the trees. And we ask the Great Mother for her blessings. O mighty Mother of us all, Mother of all fruitfulness, giver of fruit and grain, flocks and herds and children, that we be mighty, and by thy rosy love descend, we ask of you, into this our sacred circle, and to bless us and take care of us and protect us from all adversity, for all those things which endanger us. Protect us, our family, our friends, and all the living creatures of this mighty earth. Blessed be. Thank you.